Okay, so for this video we're doing the top 10 late game point cards. So these are really the bombs that you really are happy when you see in the last draft, and they could easily swing the game. Now a few things, I'm mostly focusing on things that you play in the last generation. I'm taking requirements into account a lot because that's, some cards are harder to play. And I'm using all expansions because that's just more fun. So let's begin. So well, first I'm gonna do a slight honorable mention. This is a card I used to keep a lot, Lake Marinaries. It's great. It's 4 points and it prevents your opponent from getting 2 points with the oceans, but honestly I rarely play it. I feel that the oceans are often gone by the time temperature hits 0, like that's sometimes the last ocean. And as a side note, if this is still worth it with 1 ocean, it's really efficient. If there's 8 oceans, you can still play this card. I always do. I just find that I can't keep it early because I don't know if I'm gonna play it. And yeah, but it just makes the honorable mention. Now let's talk about number 10, and I cheated. I put 2 cards there. But yeah, I wanted to talk about both because they're surprisingly similar despite being very different. But yeah, Maxwel base and Freyja Biodomes. So these are 4-point cards. They're both pretty cheap, 14 and 18. That's very good for 4 points. The where they're similar is the requirement. So one's 10% Venus, the other one's 12% Venus. Neither of those is really high, so if someone even slightly touches Venus, you'll be able to play this. But because Venus is rare, this one still have to go really on the bottom. And then they both should give you 4 points in the last generation as long as you have a Venus animal, which there's 2 of them. There's Venusian animals and Starfic birds. So they're if I had to pick one, I'd give a slight edge to Maxwel base. It's a bit more expensive and the requirements are a little harder, but if you play it even 1 turn before the last, it's an extra point. And it's also a city, which maybe you have immigration shuttles, maybe you have a city bonus, which makes it cheaper. Maybe you're Tharsis, and it can swing Klander. Like the city may do something. We don't know that it will, but it may do something. The 2 cash on Freyja Biodomes is pretty much irrelevant. The plan tag on Freyja Biodomes as a point card is not that important. It might give you a plan from Violent Enhancers or something, and the city tag is going to do nothing. So these are 2 really similar cards. If Venus is going early, you can keep them and they're going to be efficient point makers. At number 9, we have one of the old classics, anti-gravity technology. And it's just really hard to play, but if you can play it, it's great. And this is the one card in the list, or one of the few, that you can really go early with. But it's still great in the last generation, right? I mean, it's 3 points for 17, which is an average of under 6 a point. But because you'll probably play some cards after it, even in the last generation, it's 2 discount per card, so it ends up costing usually 11 or 10. Even if you play it in the last generation, because I mean it's 3 more cards is not that much, and at that point that's an insane point ratio. And the fact that you can play it sooner, the only reason it's this low is because if you don't go science and you see this mid game, it's impossible to get there. So otherwise I put it there. At number 8, I have one that I think it's kind of underrated now. I think it used to see a lot of play, and I don't see it almost at all, and it's the Capital. Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but the Capital is a great steel dump at the end of the game. The only thing it requires is 2 energy, because the 4 oceans will be there. However, you aren't guaranteed the points, but there's usually going to be a spot with at least 2 oceans adjacent to it, and then you can probably place 1 or 2 greeneries in the last generation next to it, or still one of your opponent greeneries. I mean, it's a lot of conditions, but it can be a lot of points, and it can be very swingy. It can also pick stuff from the ground, and the cost, it's high, but you are probably going to get something back from placing next to oceans, otherwise you're playing this wrong. It does have too many conditions to be higher, but it's one of the cards that sometimes if you see the last generation, it's gonna get you 4+, and there aren't that many of those. At number 7 we have the Jovian multiplier Ganymede Colony. Now it's very similar to water import from Europa. It's just 5 cheaper, but it's also a city. And I don't feel the ocean with water import from Europa is often playable at all. So water import might be an extra point, but honestly, Ganymede Colony with the city, who knows? You know, like the same thing with Maxwel base. It might swing landlord. It could, get you a placement bonus. I mean, not a placement bonus, but a city bonus from a card. But basically, it's a Jovian multiplier, and it gets you 1 point per Jovian and another point for each Jovian multiplier. So it's, I mean, this one's easily more than 4 when you play it. You just don't do it that often because you don't go Jovian that often. But I mean, this is usually worth 5 or 6 maybe even, because it's also a Jovian text. So yeah, it's great. Now at number 6 I have Interstellar Colony ship, and this is the original 4-point card, the only one in the base game. And unlike other 4-point cards like Earth Elevator or Magnetic Shield, the reason this one is here is because it's really cheap. Earth Elevator has no requirements, but at 43 it's not worth it for 4 points because it has the titanium income. So, and then Magnetic Shield, it's just that 3 energy attacks make it hard to play, and it is a steel dump, but it probably doesn't get any discounts. The thing about Interstellar Colony ship is that it's an Earth space event with points, so it gets discounts from everything, like all the space discounts, all the Earth discounts, Vitor, all the space event discounts, all the event discounts. So this card, you're never gonna pay a 24 basically. Earth space events become really cheap by the end of the game. I would easily say you can play this for 16, no problem. And it's 4 points. But if you play it for 20, it's still 5 per point. Well, a little more because of the price to buy it. And the 5 science tags aren't that difficult to the end of the game. They can be a little, but it's definitely a better point card than anti-gravity. At number 5 we have one of my favorite cards in the game, and that's Atmoscoop. So Atmoscoop, it's gonna get you almost certainly 3 points, maybe 4, and maybe more because of the Jovian tech. So the 1 point always comes, and then you don't really care that much if Mars is terraformed because Venus is usually not terraformed. So if you can't get your 2 temperature steps, you get the 2 Venus steps. And then the 2 floaters, you can place them on any card, which means they can go both on floating hubs and Jovian lanterns, which are the 2 floater cards that give you a 1/2 ratio. So that's another point. And I always like to compare this to Nitrogen from Titan because it's like Nitrogen from Titan. I couldn't even include it in the countdown, and despite how similar it is. It has no requirements. Atmoscoop has 3 science stacks, but honestly, I'll take that with how much better Atmoscoop is. And so you can put the floaters anywhere, which basically gives you double the chance of finding a 2-point target or even a 3-point target. You don't need a Jovian. And then the other thing I really like is just that it touches the tracks instead of just giving you straight up terraforming rating. And so that means you can end the game, you can prevent your opponent from getting the last 2 temperature tracks. You could play it on the temperature track ocean or on the Venus track terraforming rating. So it just has so much potential because of that. You can decide whether or not you accelerate the game with it or not, which with Atmoscoop you just can't. Sorry, with Nitrogen from Titan you just can't. And I think because these 2 cards are so similar, yet I like Atmoscoop so much more. I couldn't even throw Nitrogen from Titan inside the countdown. And so, yeah, the potential is great because of Jovian multipliers and track bonuses. So you could say I could get 7 points out of this, but the usual scenario is just 4. And for 22, that's great with all that flexibility. Okay, let's talk about another classic, and that's Advanced Ecosystems. Now this one is like the cheapest 3-point card, but it's also like 3 great tags. So it just goes very good with Arclight, ecological zone and decomposers, but also like viral enhancers and GMO contract. Like all of those things together would be 6 points, 3 plants, 6 cash back. Now that's unlikely, but I have played it for 5 points with decomposers and ecological zone often, so that's not that rare. And I have played for plants with viral enhancers, and also these can be you can play these earlier, much earlier, and have it be, you know, food for NRA or insects. So yeah, really good card, really cheap. At worst, it's 3 points for 14, which is under 5. And the requirement is really, again, not that hard. So yeah, one of my favorite cards in the game's Advanced Ecosystems. Alright, top 3. So number 3, Imported Nitrogen. And this is one of the easiest ones to play. Now, if you have a 1-point animal, which is pretty easy, any 1-point animal, this is already 3 points. If you happen to have a microbe card, it's usually an extra point. Whether usually I have is decomposers, because one of the few that I play. But if you have a 2-point like Venusian insects or ants, it could be an extra one even. Or if you have a bumper, or maybe something like sulfur-eating bacteria, then it's 6 money. So big discount on itself. And then the 4 plants are usually an extra rarity, but there's which is can be 2 points. So this is potentially 5 points, and it costs 23. But just like Interstellar Colony ship is an Earth-based event, and this is also great for flipping eccentric because it's 5 resources, which like not a lot of people expect in the last round. So yeah, one of the best point cards in the game. I always keep this. Is really easy to play. You just need a 1-point animal, and this is worth it basically. It'll get you a bunch of points. Now number 2, this is unlike number 3. Number 3, Terraforming Ganymede, I don't always keep, and I don't always get to play. It's it's a Jovian multiplier with 2 points on it. That can also flip Benefactor. And so it has the potential for the most points in the game. It's just rare that you get all those points. Like, I've gotten 10 out of these without flipping Benefactor, just with other Jovian tags and other Jovian multipliers. And because it has 2 points on it, in addition to the multiplying the Jovian tags, it's just so many points. So if you have 4 Jovian tags and one of those is a multiplier, this one is 7 points, and that's not super hard, right? 3 Jovians plus Ganymede Colony or 3 Jovians plus Aya at the beginning of the game, that's not super hard, and then this is worth 7. It has the potential to go higher. Like I've gotten 10, and the best card to flip Benefactor for sure. Because usually when you go Jovian, you're not the Terraformer, and they really don't expect it. Of course, you gotta Terraform a little to be close, but they really don't expect it. So, yeah. Very, very good card. The only reason, despite the highest point potential, is not number 1, because number 1 is just way easier to play, and number 1 is Large Convoy. So, this is basically, everyone sees this as 7 points, which for 39, it's a bit higher again on the ratio, but yeah, it's an Earth Space event, so once again you get all the discounts, and then it's also, so all you need is an animal basically to make this worth it. With an animal it's 6, if the last ocean is open it's 7. And then you draw 2 cards, which, you usually have your cash kind of counted on the last generation, but if you draw 2 cards, you can draw another point card. And so, because of this, it's a lot like Imported Nitrogen to me, except it's a little higher. And the ocean is better than the terraforming rating that Nitrogen gives you, because you're taking it from your opponent, you're also picking stuff. You can pick plants and probably get 2 cash at least back. So it's even more discounted. Yeah, and it's just insane for 7 points. This is another card that I always just keep because it has another. I just need a 1-point animal and it's worth it. And yeah, that's it. Oh, well, as a side note, you can also play this for 5 plants if you need to end the game, but that's usually not gonna get you the 4 points the animals get you. Although if you have 2 cities and the oxygen track is not max, it's actually 4 points. But then you need 3 plants too, so no. I always play this for the animals. Just always keep a 1-point animal, always keep important nitrogen and large convoy. But yeah, that's it for my video. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and see you next time.